Hi everyone, welcome to the Car Chat podcast, and with me today I have Mark Lyon from GTO Engineering. Hi Mark.
Good morning everyone. Hello.
Can you tell the listeners a little bit about sort of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so basically I started off as an engineer, did a college course, got my qualifications, and then did an apprenticeship at GTO Engineering.
Okay.
And I worked there for a few years, and very interesting times. This was probably the very late 70s, early 80s. And then I went to work in London for Straight 8, which was owned by Danny Donovan, who's a great guy. And I was there for a few years, and then I was asked to go back to DK by David Cottingham, who was and is the boss there. And I have very, very happy memories of working there. Fantastic team. The guys there were all pretty much all still friends today. Some of them work here. And we restored, I would say, probably some of the world's very best cars. We restored 3 long-nose D-types. We restored 375 pluses, multiple Testarossas, GTOs, a lot of GTOs, many short wheelbases. It was a very special time. Cars were still being found in boxes then that had been neglected and put in someone's barn, and then the guy dies or whatever happens. And
does that happen like a surprisingly often?
Not now, but then, yeah, we were buying. I mean, David was fantastic. He was buying cars from everywhere, and he travelled a lot, and he was really, daring in what he did, in the sense that he was buying things that no one else really wanted to touch, and we were tasked as a workshop with putting them back together and making them into an entity again. And then we had the fun of road testing them. And in those days, there was no mobile phones, and we were just like, 2 of us used to go out at night. Used to start at 3 or 4 in the morning and just drive until 7 or 8, and we did that all the time. I mean, it was just great fun.
Amazing.
There's lots of stories from those years. And then I left DK in the early 90s and set up at my house, actually, in a small garage in my house, just doing engines and gearboxes and axles, mainly for DK, actually, because we remained friends. And it was a kind of hard work, not much fun time. I mean, it was good fun. The work was fun, but it was, I had no money, and it was hard to do anything. But then I got premises in Harrow, Central Harrow, actually very lovely premises, which my brother owns, and he said, "Do you want to share them with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's fantastic." Then I took on my first couple of staff, amongst them Kevin Jones. He was the first guy to come and work for me. He still works for me today. He worked at DK as well. So we've been working together since about 1987, 88.
Yeah.
And his son now works for me too. But we had a lot of fun in Harrow. It was very, very overcrowded premises. They were tiny premises, but we had a lot of fun there. We worked for some of the best historic racers, some of the great cars. We did a lot of Bizzarinis. We did, sports prototype cars. We did a lot of Ferraris, of course, as well. And then we moved. Then we had an offer from Tony Merrick, who, I don't know if anyone knows who he is, but he's a very, very well-known historic racer who had a fantastic business. And he said, "Do you want to take over my business?" And it was a real privilege. It was a real compliment to me. I felt extremely, fortunate to have been offered this opportunity. So we came down to Berkshire and took over his business and all his staff and all his customers. It took a while to work out the deal, as these things do. Tony stayed on with me for a while as a consultant, and so we were then in Hare Hatch, which is just up the road from where we are now, for 13 years, in a beautiful farmhouse. It was a really lovely place, and we grew very significantly in those premises. We started the parts department. We became kind of what we are today, which is nothing particularly to be proud of, but it's just, it was a real process,
yeah,
and a journey. And we got up to quite a few staff there. I think we were probably 30 staff there. It was quite. I mean, they weren't small premises, but they were. We were very much constrained by the premises size. Yeah. And then we finally managed to find these premises where we are now, which we bought 4 years ago, and we've now got planning permission to build a big unit here. So we're going forwards. We'll also open Los Angeles. We opened Atlanta first. Which was just a parts operation, which was very successful. But unfortunately, or very sadly, the guy who worked for me there died, and so we had to. We didn't have to, but we decided to close that place, and we went to LA. So we just got the operation in Los Angeles now, which operates very well. I've got a good manager there. She's a lady actually, good staff, loyal staff. So yeah, and then. Here we are here today, and we've got a big parts business. I guess it's about a third of our revenue. The restoration and service business is kind of steady, and the recreational revival business is growing.
Yeah, that initial point when you started making parts, what sort of spurred you on to start doing that? Was it just where did it come from?
We started a parts department by accident. So what happens is you're restoring old Ferraris, and you've got a car you're restoring, and you need a part, but you haven't got it. You can't find it. No one's got it.
Yeah.
So you go and make one. But when you're making one, you kind of go, well, actually, I might as well make three because it's not much more expensive. Yeah. And so we did that. And then, of course, then you think, well, I need to sell the other two. And it's just it just happened like that. And then we quite enjoyed it, actually. I enjoy parts. I enjoy the manufacturing process. So we just started making parts, and it was actually quite a good profit return on it, because if you're making bits that nobody's got, and nobody particularly knows how much they should cost to make, you can actually command a decent price. So we worked out, that it was quite a good business model. So I started doing that with, actually at the time, it was my engine shop guy back in Scarlett's Farm, and he was really good. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but he was he helped me a lot. And then we took on our first parts guy, who's actually just retired, and he worked in a tiny little office with very little kind of stock or facilities. But we made a go of it, and then my son joined, Vern joined, and he really drove the thing forwards. And we've now got 10 full-time people in parts, which is really. I mean, I love the parts business. We're doing Ferrari parts. We're going to do Maserati and Lamborghini shortly. We're looking at extending our website to include those things. So, yeah, it's a very exciting business to be in, and the whole manufacturing process is just such fun.
Yeah. How has that changed from the beginning? And as well, I imagine when you first started, when you're trying to get parts, like you didn't have, the internet wasn't really there, was it? It was
no,
not really. So you've got to find someone that knows someone that can get you parts.
I think what happened early on was that I travelled a lot, and I used to just go and buy big stashes of parts. People collect parts; they like them. Mm. So people have got cars maybe, and maybe they've got a workshop, or maybe they've just got cars, and they think, I'll buy an extra one of those. They're usually people, wealthy people. So, but then they get old, or they decide they want to do something different, and so we were just going and buying parts everywhere. And I've still got lots of them today. I mean, some of them stuff, when you buy a whole load of parts, you probably sell 20% of them.
Yeah.
And we've got some wonderful old parts that are lovely to look at, but I don't know what I'm going to do with them, one day. But I suppose I'll sell a stash of parts. But it's so we were buying old parts, but as time went on, less and less and less became available. So we started making more and more parts. So we now obviously make the whole 250 short wheelbase, and we make lots of parts for lots of Ferraris and other cars, but mostly Ferraris. So, that's the way it's progressed, and it's been very organic. It hasn't been sort of anything very clever about it. It was just happened.
Yeah, just grown. And then at the beginning, presumably the processes for making these parts has changed quite a lot since the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, when we started, we were kind of doing rough sketches on paper, and we did get parts drawn. Not usually, but always by a third party in those days. And some of the early days of CAD, we got people to do stuff for us. But about 5 years ago, we decided that we made a sort of kind of policy decision, or what you want to call it, where we were going to say, okay, we're going to actually draw everything we make.
Yeah.
And then we can draw it, we can make it, and then we can check the item against the drawing when it's actually physically made. We also do that even for outsourced parts. So when we get a subcontractor to make something, we will still have a drawing for it, which we'll check against. It's quite cumbersome, but it's so much better.
Yeah. I imagine like the end result is so much better.
Oh yeah, it's a different world, and obviously technology's moved on and everything's become much more possible. We've also sourced a lot of old Ferrari drawings. We bought a company called FIM, which is which is a radiator oil cooler company that made all of Ferrari's fuel tanks, oil coolers, water radiators, all those things, from about 1948 to 1995. And we've got all the drawings for that.
Okay.
So we can reproduce all that stuff quite simply. We've also got some good contacts in Italy where we've got a lot of original Ferrari drawings, which for a long time are very hard to get, but have got easier to get. We also make parts for Ferrari, so we need the information sometimes to make a bit that they need.
And what might they ask you for? Or just is it literally now just any parts for whatever 250 or something?
Yeah, it's only we don't make any body parts. It's only mechanical parts, and usually it's through a third party because of the way the politics in Italy work, which is it's just fine. I mean, you just kind of get over that. But yeah, I mean, we make crankshafts for them. We make conrods and lots of various pieces. We sell a lot of parts to Italy. We don't always know where they're going to go.
Yeah,
but we just sell them to Italy.
And then so at some point in time, you decided to assemble all of the parts you've got together to make your sort of own car, or it's not. It is an exact replica. Is that the best way of describing it? How would you describe your 250?
Yes, no. We started off trying to make what is known in the trade as a toolroom copy. We have since done a few extras and a few sort of deviations from that.
Yeah.
At customers' requests. we started that because, I mean, it's one of those things now you look back at it and go, how crazy was that? But we in 2008, when, the world was really upside down financially, I mean, I know it's bad today, but 2008 was horrendous. And I'd been through a couple of recessions before, and I said to the boys in the workshop, I said, look, we need to find something to keep ourselves busy this year because we're going to be quiet. It's not because people run out of money. People just sit on their hands and do nothing for a year. Yeah. They don't need to. It's just the way it is. So I said to the lads, well, what about making our own car? And of course the boys were like, this is great fun. Let's just do this. Yeah. So we started in 2008, which was a pretty insane thing to do. But we began then, and we didn't know if we'd make 2 or 4 or 6 or we had no idea.
Yeah.
There was no business plan to it. It was just like, let's do it. And so we started making in 2008. It probably took us 2 years to make our first car. We started off with the 250 GTE chassis, and we thought, we'll just carve this up and put this there and change that. And we worked on it for a week, and I said to the boys, nah, this is not, forget it. I hate this. This process is wrong. We need to make a whole new chassis because we're making something that is intrinsically unsafe, and it's a lot of work for a bad product.
Yeah.
So we went and made a completely new chassis. We were very, very fortunate that we'd worked on probably I don't know, getting on for half of the real cars over many years. And, looking back at it, I wish we'd taken more measurements and photos than we did. But, so we knew a lot about the cars. It was like we kind of knew if something was right or wrong. And so we drew a chassis up, put it into CAD, and we started making chassis. We made the first one ourselves, a lot of handwork, but now we've got a company that does it with us because we still have to have some input even now. And then we made chassis. We made a buck. We started making bodies, and at that time you could still buy quite a few parts actually, even in 2008. But now we make pretty much everything because everything's become unavailable.
Yeah, and presumably every time you get your hands on something that you've not designed and rebuilt, you're like, okay, we'll take that part, we'll scan it, we'll draw it out, and then we can make it. So with those early cars, was that customers coming to you to say, will you make one? Or did you were like, let's make one? And then...
It's very hard to sell something you haven't got.
Yeah.
You know, if you say to someone, if you've never made a car and you say, I'm going to make a car, can you buy it? That's quite hard. We were very, very fortunate. We did have a couple of good clients who said, yeah, we'll put a bit of money up. We sold the first 3 cars so cheaply because we needed to just get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
But yeah, that people did put money up for cars, which when there wasn't a car there, which even now surprises me. But and then you know, after that we just started selling them, and you know, it's we sold a lot of cars now. I'm not saying it's an easy market, but it's, you know, we made it work.
Yeah. And what are most people like of your buyers for those cars? Are they, I presume, a percentage of some people that have real ones as well?
Yeah.
And then how does that work out? Like who's buying a 250 short wheelbase that is a 250 short wheelbase but isn't? I don't know. It's a weird, but who's coming and who's buying those cars?
I think it is people who've got real cars. It's also a lot of people who've maybe had a real car many years ago.
Yeah.
Would love to have one again, but now the prices are so high that they think, oh, I'll do this instead.
Yeah.
It's also, there's quite a few people who like to have a lot of cars.
Right.
You know, we sell to people who've got maybe 50, 60, 70 cars. They don't want to have one car that is really, really expensive.
Yeah.
It's actually a very mixed demographic of the people who buy the cars. You know, there's everything from young guys to quite old guys and everything in between.
Yeah, it's a really, I mean, having just been out and driven the short wheelbase is sort of a competition-y spec, that one. After about 10 minutes, it sort of warmed up, and then I'd really sort of like revved it out. Oh my God, I just had to sort of like, I drove for about 5 minutes and then just like pulled over. I had like a bit of a moment, just like, what is going on here? How are we? Yesterday, I went and drove a brand new Ferrari F8, and I've come here today and I've driven this old Ferrari, and it was like a million times better. It was what cars are all about. And for me, it's a quirky seating position, and your knees are slightly out the way, and the steering wheel's a bit different, and like, it's an older car, but the way the engine like revs and delivers that noise is just unbelievable. It's just something else.
Yeah.
And I can totally see why, like you said, if you know, maybe you could afford to buy a real one. I don't even know what they cost now. What does a real one cost?
A steel car's about 6 million. Comp alley car can be anything up to 20. Yeah.
So I could see why you go, I don't necessarily want to drive a £10 million car around. Even if you can afford to buy one or whatever, you might go, I can have exactly the same experience. And it is exactly the same experience, other than the value, kudos, whatever, insurance bill. Like, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I get it. Wow. I think amazing. You saw me when I came back in.
Yeah.
I'm just like, you look a bit hot. And I was like, okay, I was a bit hot, but like, just like, I couldn't really describe it. It was such a weird, it was like a really life-changing drive for me.
Yeah.
And I've driven a lot of stuff, but I've not driven something with that engine in that sort of format. It's just something else. So anyway, yeah, it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, we drive obviously a lot of cars here, and there's always some high spots of cars, but I still enjoy getting in one and just having a blast. It's just great.
And when so I've not driven any of the other cars with that engine or similar engine. And how would you say that experience differs amongst the other cars that are sort of similar?
So the Testarossa, which we also make, it's obviously an open car.
Yeah.
And I like open cars. I mean, I've always liked open cars, and they're providing the weather's good, they're fantastic fun to drive. I really like a Testarossa, but a lot of people are a little bit frightened by them. They're a little bit more overtly sort of race car-ish.
Okay.
But they're really, really good fun. But, you probably, for instance, wouldn't want to necessarily take your girlfriend out on it.
Yeah.
Because they're quite noisy and,
raw.
A bit raw. So they're great. The California Spider is a much more gentle car. It's more of a Grand Tourer sort of cruiser thing. Yeah, very beautiful car. We made them because people wanted them more than because I wanted to make it.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep doing new things. I mean, it's that's what makes you get up in the morning, is making the next thing.
What's the next thing?
The next thing is going to be our own car. So we're going to do a very special, a new V12 engine, which we're going to make ourselves. Be a really exciting car. Be light. Be not digital. Very analog. Just an exciting thing to get into. But with creature comforts, because the thing with these cars is they're fantastic. But if it's raining or it's windy or it's cold, and the screen's messed up and all those kind of things, which when you drive your own car, it's fine. But we want to make something that doesn't have those problems. So
yeah, how would you describe your sort of like perfect driving car? Like, what sort of qualities does it need to have?
Well, I think a perfect driving car is different for different days, to be honest with you.
Okay.
There's nothing like you go, I want to get in that every day. I think the most rounded car, old car, is probably a short wheelbase. I mean, if you think about 1960, when they came out and all the other stuff that was around, you just go, man, they must have been like a spaceship. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
You think of all the things that, your parents or grandparents had, and you just go, well, I don't know, how did these fit into this whole mix? But I think today, if it's a lovely day like today is, I think I'd go in an open car every time. Testarossa, Jaguar D-Type, something like sports racing cars are the best of the best. No question about that. But if it's maybe not so warm, not so sunny, but decent weather, short wheelbase is great. GTO is a little bit too raw, a bit too racy. I mean, they're fantastic fun to drive, but a bit like you said about your F40, it's kind of something you go out for 20 or 40 minutes in, and you have a great time. But that's about
that's about it. Yeah,
yeah. And GTO is very like that. I mean, I think they're just a wonderful car to drive. But again, would you want to go out for a sort of day out or drive with your wife or girlfriend or whatever? Probably not.
Yeah, I had a look in the window of one last week. There was one in London, like a light blue one. And I don't think I'd really looked at the interior before. And it's very race car.
Yeah. And it feels it. Yeah, they're noisy, they're quite harsh. You when you've driven it for 45 minutes, you feel fulfilled but quite exhausted.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you just go, it's fantastic, but, and as I say, unless you've got a real petrol head partner, probably not for her.
Yeah, not for the long trips and whatnot. Yeah, it's funny how there's cars like that. And there aren't that many, I say that many. Yeah, there aren't many cars you can buy now that deliver that experience.
No.
Like, nothing's that raw and like visceral because it's too much weight and stuff between you and the important bits.
Yeah. Yeah, weight is a huge problem in modern cars. It's a huge problem. I mean, they just don't... You can't make a heavy car feel good.
No.
You simply can't.
And it's depressing. It really is, because you get caught up in all of whatever the latest, greatest thing and you go, oh, that's probably quite good. And then invariably I'll go and do a track day and drive something really light. I have a Radical that weighs 600 kilos, something like that. And you get back in any road car after something that light and they're quite performance based, and you're just like, no, this just feels awful on track.
Yeah, I mean, you can't overcome the laws of physics. I mean, they're there. You know, that's it.
Yeah, and people just seem to go down this weird route of like, let's say you get a new Bentley or something like that, and there'll be this technical talk about how they've put in motors to counteract the body roll. And one thing is like, yeah, but how much did that system you just put in weigh?
Yep.
To counteract the fact that it weighs a lot and more, and everything just goes up and 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 up.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the big problems with the whole hybrid thing, because, you know, that is just, by definition, it's just heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's mad.
I mean, they can produce insane amounts of power and torque, but at the end of the day, you're driving around a tank.
Yeah, and your speed limit is 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So with your cars, can you, let's say the car I drove today, can you go and compete with those and take them on events and stuff like that?
Yeah, we've got a car this weekend at Monza Historics, just done the Tour Auto, and then it's doing Centura Rally in Italy.
That looks like a cool event.
Which is a really nice event. It's very, very well run. The organisers are good friends of ours, and I'd recommend anybody to do that. It's a superb event. Luigi, the guy who runs it, is a lovely man, and you go through some beautiful places in Italy and some nice, you know, hotels and restaurants and all that stuff. It's really good. So yeah, I mean, the Centura has kind of become what the Tour Auto was.
Right.
And no, I'd recommend it to anybody. It's really good.
No, it does sound like a quite cool event.
Yeah.
If you were building yourself one of your cars, what would you build and what spec? Because I know you've got a few things you can change and do along the way.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would actually stick to the 4-speed gearbox. We do offer a 5-speed, but I find the 4-speed gearbox is fine. I would go definitely for painted wheels, not polished, because I don't like polished wheels. I have a very interesting paint colour because, you know, red cars, silver cars, lovely.
Been fun to death, though.
But they're kind of everywhere. I'd probably have a 3.5 litre engine. I might have a 4 litre. That's really all you need. Honestly, you know, I don't need to do anything really that special because they're just such a great thing.
How do the engines differ as like a driving experience between the 3.5 and the 4 litre?
The 3.5 is much more drivable. It's got more torque. And, you know, I don't know how other people would agree with me, but for me, torque is almost more important than power. It's a very drivable car. It revs very well. So with the 4 litre engine, we increase the stroke. So it just doesn't rev quite as freely as the 3.5. The 3.5 is the same stroke as the 3 litre. So it's still, but it's more over square. In other words, the bore is bigger than the stroke. And it just kind of hits the sweet spot. And we've got a few different choices of camshafts, which we try and tailor it to what people want to use the car for, whether it's cruising or fast road or track.
Yeah.
There's all those different options. We can sort of try and make it as close to what people want as we can. That for me is all I really need. There's nothing more special than that I need.
Aircon?
No.
No need.
I wouldn't say there's no need, but for me, it needs to be as basic as it should have been.
Yeah.
You know, I understand we sell cars to California, we sell cars to the south of France. I understand people have to have aircon, but it adds a fair bit of weight.
How much weight does it add?
I reckon the aircon probably adds 60 kilos.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's quite a lot.
Yeah. And quite a lot of complication. And actually the aircon is good, but it's not like you're getting in a modern Audi.
Yeah.
It's not. It's kind of spot cooling. It's not like the whole cabin is really freezing cold, because it would be too much to do that. And actually the fact that the car's drafty and it just doesn't happen. But we do it, and we've done a few different versions of it now. So I personally, I wouldn't have it. Although, we had that heat wave, what was it, a week or 10 days ago? I mean, we had a few journalists here driving their cars, and they came out and they were melting. But I mean, people still smiled, and they were like, yeah, okay, I get it. It's really, really hot. But
it's pretty when it's been 35 in the UK, that's not normal.
That's unusual, yeah.
And today it's pretty hot, actually. It's like 25 or 26 or something. And I got warm, but that was the last thing I was thinking about, driving that car.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about the short wheelbase is that because we've got the Perspex sliding windows, you just clip them out. So you just take the windows right out, and you can put them underneath the passenger seat, and you can just drive with no windows, and they keep cooling. It's fine. Yeah.
And you just get that noise.
Yeah, no, it's just fun.
It is fun. With the tool built cars, can you tell the difference? Obviously, I'm guessing you can tell the difference, but if they're like exactly the same, is it difficult to tell the difference? Or is it just they look newer?
I think it is difficult. I mean, you'll get all sorts of keyboard warriors saying there's this and that are wrong and right with them, but, we've got, I don't know if you saw it in the workshop, we've got a picture up on the wall with 7 short wheelbases all lined up outside our old place, actually. And they're all different from each other. And we know very well that because we've measured, we're probably the only people in the world who actually measured loads of cars because we needed to. And the differences are staggering. Just staggering. The steering wheels and the steering column's 2 inches in a different place. And,
wow.
And you just go, well, that's incredible, It just depended if it was Luigi or Piero or, whoever it was who made it. And
how many glasses of wine
how much Lambrusco they'd had. Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
No, that is such an interesting point. Does that lead to problems when you're making the parts? Because different cars, stuff doesn't quite fit.
I think making body parts without a car is impossible. Mechanical parts are okay. Yeah.
But no. If you want to get, let's just say you want to get your car PPF'd nowadays, so paint protection film and stuff like that. All of this sort of era of car, they're like, they're all the panels, they're all different. Every single car, we have to redo it.
Yeah, I mean, there's with the short wheelbase, there's like 6 or 7 different sort of actually set out versions. People have actually written papers on this, which is quite interesting. But actually, there's many more than that. Every car is slightly different. We've restored many, many cars, and they're all different, which is part of the charm. Yeah.
When you're restoring a car, what's the sort of process? What's the most sort of complicated bit of it?
Well, I think the first thing is to evaluate what the car is that you start off with. Is it basically a good car that's not got too much corrosion? Or does it need everything, So one of the first decisions is, do you need to take the body off the car?
Okay.
Because if you need to take the body off the chassis, that's quite a big step. So you try and avoid that if you can. But, you need to... The body and chassis bit of the process is probably the longest and most painstaking. But, what you've got to remember also is that these cars have now been around for 60, 70 years... and been already overhauled and rebuilt multiple times. Yeah. So you're actually dealing with, not with the Ferrari that Ferrari made, but with the car that other people have messed with so many times in between.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why making a reproduction car is such a good idea, because you actually, it's a bit like rebuilding a really old house that everyone's done lots of bad repairs on.
just damage control. Like,
it's just hard work. You know, we've had people who've and they come to us with engines to rebuild, which we do all the time. And actually, you say you'd be better off having a new engine because it's you've got the whole structure, the integrity of the thing's gone.
Yeah, because presumably every time you rebuild it, you lose a little bit of the engine. Well,
you do, and of course, the thing is, these cars weren't always worth multiple millions of pounds, you know. So people were doing things on the cheap and trying to cut corners, and maybe you got a car dealer who was trying to move the car on at a profit and wanted to spend as little as possible. And all those things have happened in the car's history. So, you know, you have got all those problems to deal with.
Yeah. Do you keep track of all the cars that have come through and things that have been done to them, and a bit of a file on each, like?
Yeah, we do keep a file on every car, yeah.
And see what's been done to it. And
yeah, we try and trace history as much as we can. I mean, even for cars we don't do, we just try and keep an eye on where things are and what's happening to them.
Is that quite an easy thing to do or difficult?
It's a lot easier now there's the internet. It's a lot easier. I mean, we had lots of very good friends who are historians. Most of them sadly have passed on now, but we were good friends with a lot of those people, and we got a lot of information from them while they were still around. So, yeah, it's an interesting... It's kind of a thing. Do we need to do it? We probably don't, but it's just fun.
Yeah, and it's like these cars at the end of the day, yes, it's a bit of metal and whatever that delivers a great experience, but it is interesting seeing who's owned them, what's been done with them, pictures from the past, all of the stories. Like that is something that's great about classic cars or just older cars. They can have all of these cool stories. Or not so cool stories, depending on.
Yeah, I mean it is. I mean the people are as much fun as the cars. You know, we over lockdown, I went through all my old photos, you know, printed photos, because I was trying to sort them out because I had to get out of the house and do something, and it was fascinating going through them and just remembering the people and all the stories that went with the cars, and it was just a really good experience. I mean, it wasn't something I would have chosen to do because no one wanted to have lockdown, but it was actually a really good way to spend the time and sort stuff out.
Have you got any particular favourite people you've met or things you've done with the cars?
Yeah, but there's so many people, so many really good people. I mean, and they've been really good fun, and you know, we were good. I was good friends with Ralph Lauren for a while. We did some cars for him. He was a really nice guy. Got to know him fairly well, and he got to know my family, and you know, people like that. He was a very warm guy. He wasn't, you know, people look at him as some incredibly famous, you know, guy, but he was actually a very normal person.
Yeah, that's something that I love about, let's say, doing these podcasts and whatever, or it's just meeting different people and getting to chat to them about whatever, and all of these people. Some people get sort of put up on this pedestal for whatever reason. They've done something super successful or whatever. But at the end of the day, you just chat to them and they're normal people.
Yeah.
And you can just chat about whatever you want. And there's something quite disarming, I think, about doing a podcast. Like people will just generally answer questions because you're having a conversation. That's what people do. But I think a lot of people sort of hide and they feel like, oh, I can't ask this person this question. Okay, if you've just met someone, don't ask them something really weird. But like, if you've chatted to someone for an hour or whatever and you've got something you want to ask, that's probably more interesting than just skirting around everything else the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, some of the old racing drivers are just terrific characters. I mean, just, you know, and you just spend a bit of time with them and it's just such fun. I mean, it's just, you know, you can't buy that sort of thing.
No, and I imagine a lot of, like the older racing drivers, it's just a different era. Like to be a racing driver now, it's just different. Like it's way more sort of serious. Like the idea of people, you know, going down the pub and then going for a race the next day or that afternoon or whatever, that just seems ludicrous. But these larger than life characters, which I think you had to be at that point in time when you're really are putting your life properly on the line the entire time. Interesting days.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we spend a bit. David Piper lives quite near here, and he comes here a fair bit, and he's just one of those people that he's just a fun guy, and he still remembers, and his wife's brilliant, and they just can tell you all sorts of stories of things that you think, did that really happen?
Yeah. Even you're saying like back in the day, you used to go out at the early hours of the morning to go and road test cars. Like, presumably that's a bit more tricky nowadays.
Well, it's not more tricky, but you've got dynamometers now. You've got so many different ways of testing cars. But in those days, really the only way to do was simply go out and drive them.
Yeah. Did you get quite good at picking up small little things?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, we had a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it sounds like it. One of the things you do is you do event support and race prep and stuff like that.
Yeah, we do race prep mainly for people that we really like, we get on well with, and it's good. It's good for my staff.
Right.
I try and do the things they like doing because it's important to me that they have a good time.
Yeah.
Racing and race events is not a good business model. It's almost impossible to make money out of it. But if you get some exposure, if the staff like it, and you don't lose money, yeah, why not?
Yeah, and it's quite a fun thing.
Yeah.
To do for everyone. I've always found when you look at, I do a bit of racing, and you look at the bills, and you're like, I don't understand how something overall costs so much, but actually when you break it down, nothing seems like it's that expensive. Like, I don't look at how much, let's say as someone's doing a support package and they're coming to help out, and you've got like 4 guys working on the car or whatever, and you're like, well, I'm not paying these people that much money, but it just at the end of the day comes out as
it mounts up
as a big bill.
Yeah,
quite often tyres and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's all sort of mad, but good fun. Something that I've always seen when I've seen people racing, they might be racing a 250 LM or something like that, and you go, okay, they're racing a £10 million car or whatever. What happens if they stuff it? Now, presumably, it doesn't cost £10 million to rebuild that car, but that must vary quite a lot.
Well, I think that's changed a lot in the last 10 years. I mean, people were racing those cars. Are they now? Scarcely, really.
Yeah.
People will generally build another car, a replica car. The problem is not the cost of the repair. It's the fact that, especially in this day and age with the internet, everybody knows that car's had a big accident.
Yeah.
And it's sort of it's in its history. So when you come to sell the car or whatever, it's like, oh, that's the car that so and so went off at Goodwood in, or whatever it is. Yeah. And that's it's obviously a bit of a red mark in the car's history.
Yeah, and these things are they are like so valuable now. To race an original, I mean, it's pretty ballsy, and you've got to be pretty wealthy to be playing that game.
I guess so, but it just seems a shame they're not getting used. I just think it's such a shame that cars are not getting used. Now, we had funnily enough, we had a GTO, a 250 GTO and a Testarossa here last week, original cars, both of them. We took them up the road and everyone's going, are you driving those cars? And I said, well, it's a car. That's what it's for. Why wouldn't you? So, yeah, it's kind of, they kind of lost it's all gone wrong because people just look at them as art objects or whatever. No, they're a car. The reason they're valuable is because they're a good car.
Yeah.
That's the only reason they're valuable. Yeah, maybe it's got good history, but you've just got to get over some of that stuff and drive it.
I know, and I wish I could have a switch in my brain when I'm driving something that I'm basically like, well, I can't afford to bend this sort of thing, that just goes off, and then it's just a car. It'd be great to be able to sort of just appreciate cars as a car and remove the value, because it does. If you're driving something that's really expensive, you're aware.
Yeah, you kind of are, but if you do it a lot, it sort of, you become, it just is another car.
Yeah. Well, I guess you get to drive a lot of cool things.
We're fortunate we do here. I mean, it's not just me, the staff too, and we're careful. Of course, we're very careful, very respectful. But you know, it's what they're for.
Yeah, it is. And it's like you said, it's a shame if things get too valuable and people don't go and do road trips and
It's a terrible shame.
all that and use them and see them out and about, and they just sit in some warehouse somewhere, never to be seen again.
No, it's really sad. We've got a guy, he's a really nice older guy now, but we've been looking after him for probably 20 years, and he's got a fantastic comp short wheelbase, probably the best car there is.
Mm.
And he just drives it to the cricket club, parks it outside, and you know he's had it for such a long time. He's very relaxed about it, and that's the way it should be. I mean, why people are just being so stupid about it.
Yeah, that is what it's. And then you get like, every now and then you'll see a video of someone, I don't know, like doing donuts in some sort of competition-y type vehicle, whether it's an F50 or whatever, and you'll get a whole bunch of keyboard warriors be like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You doing?" It's like no, it's like this is way less stress on that car than driving it around a racetrack.
Yeah,
and that's what you should do. Like you should put a smile on your face.
Yeah, I mean, it should do. And I drove a short wheelbase, a real car, the other day to an event, and everyone's like, "You've driven it here?" And I said, "Well, why not?
How else are they going to get here?"
Yeah, shouldn't you bring in a truck? And I said, "No." I just got in the car with Charlotte and we drove it. Then it was just like it's just a normal thing to do.
Yeah, and I like how these older cars, like how many short wheelbases are there?
160, just over, yeah.
Something okay, and mileage on those cars presumably doesn't matter.
No.
And that is the bet. Like if you can have a car where the mileage doesn't matter, we've seemed to got this thing nowadays where mileage really matters on like modern Ferraris and stuff, and it makes them basically undrivable.
Yep.
Because you just are so aware of how many pounds it's going to cost to drive like 1 mile.
Yep. Yeah, I had an FF for a while, and everyone just kept saying to me, "Look at the miles on it," and I'm going, well, I was using it every day, and I just sold it at the end because I was like, if it's that sensitive to being used, then I'll just buy another car.
Yeah, 100%. Like this, and I don't know why some cars are like that, or whether we get to a point where the cars are old enough. But I don't know. With like 40s and 50s and stuff, there's quite not tons of cars, but there's quite a lot of cars. So you can always distinguish some moron that's got a 30-mile Enzo or whatever, and you're like, okay, fine. If it's an investment, whatever. But like, you can't drive it.
No,
like, you literally can't drive that thing. So you need to buy two.
Yeah. We had a guy come here the other day, and he came from Holland, and he arrived in a LaFerrari, and I said, "Oh, where did you pick that up from?" He said, "No, I've driven it from Holland."
Nice.
And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, I've done 15,000 miles on it." He said, "Why wouldn't you?" So, there are still some proper people around.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That is so good. And that car, for example, is a perfect example. If you got it from new, that is the car to be driving all the time because it's always worth more than you paid for it.
Yeah.
So you're always in the money.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Whereas if you buy a car that's very expensive and then if you drive it, it goes down in value, that's a rubbish situation to be in.
Yeah.
You want to be able to have but then people seem to flip it and they go, yeah, but I better not drive that car because it will lose some of the value that I haven't realised I will only get when I sell it.
Yeah, but it's about people buying cars for the wrong reasons. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, and you get people are entitled to buy cars for whatever reason they like. Like, fair enough. I just love it, like you say, when you meet someone that's like, I've done 15,000 miles in my life, or whatever. Like any car that's just remotely would be frowned upon by some people. That's just the best thing.
Yeah.
I met a guy a while ago now, 2 years ago maybe, and he'd owned a 288 GTO at one point, sold it, and then found it again. And it hadn't done that many miles, like 5,000 miles or something. And he bought it again, and then was just doing everything with it.
Yeah.
Like the next day, he was at Silverstone doing a track day. And then a week later, he was at Spa doing a track day. He was like, I'm going to use it.
Fun,
Like,
yeah.
great. And you're like, oh, yeah, fair play. I rate that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I used to have a bit to do with a guy called Jess Pora. You probably don't know him. He's a Ferrari rider historian. He's recently passed away, but he had a 250 GTO. Used it every day for work.
Sick.
I mean, it's just like he said, well, why wouldn't you? You know, it was a fantastic car.
So good. Good. I love that stuff. Right. Well, I normally wrap these up with 5 questions.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay. Do you have a most memorable driving trip or journey?
I think the most, I mean, there's quite a few, to be honest with you, but one of the most memorable trips we did was in the 375 Plus, which is a 4.9 litre V12 sports racing car. Wonderful car. And we were driving it late one night, and we got stuck. Fun enough, you'll know where it is, but we got stuck in Richmond with it in the middle of a party at like 2 a.m. in the morning, and it was just one of those things you just don't forget. We were just road testing this car, and we drove into this street party, and it was like, oh, here we go. So we just parked it up and just had some fun. So we done a few things like that, but that was a really cool experience.
Funny.
We had another one where we were road testing LM Daytonas up the A41, which is a really good road for road testing. It's very straight. It's not. I mean, we were doing flat out tests. We were going about 180 miles an hour, and we were driving up there, and there was a car on fire on the other side of the carriageway. So we locked up the car, stopped the car. Fortunately, we always had, one of the things I was always fussy about was having fire extinguishers, because there's one thing you don't want to have happen is a car catch fire.
Yeah.
So we raced across the carriageway, and there's a young black girl in this car. It was very early in the morning. And we put this fire out for her. It was just it's just things like that stick in your mind. Yeah.
Must have felt pretty good that day.
Yeah, no, it was one of those days you felt like you'd done something for somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty fun. Okay, 5-car garage, unlimited value. It's got to sort of fit into your life.
Yeah, I think you need one closed car. I would probably have a short wheelbase as a closed car. I think the rest would probably be open cars. I'd have a Jaguar D-Type, long nose D-Type, one of the best cars of all time.
What do you specifically like about that?
Fantastic handling car. Very, the engine's got so much torque. Sounds great. Looks beautiful. There's nothing to dislike about D-Type. Testarossa. Probably something like a 335S or a 412 MI, which is a sports racing Ferrari. And then probably one, stupid car, sort of, I don't know, Rolls-Royce Corniche or something.
Nice.
Convertible.
To waft around it.
Yeah, just for when you just want to go out for a picnic.
Yeah. No, fair. It's a good bunch. Next question sort of leads on for that one. If you could only drive one car for the rest of your life.
Does it have to be an everyday car, or can it just be a fun car?
It can, you're allowed like a £500 thing on the side.
So this is a fun car.
So this can be
Because
a
that's
fun...
different. If I chose a fun car, it's not something I want to drive to work necessarily.
It's got to be that sort of blend of, well, okay, the caveat is you've got £500 to have on another car, and then you've got this car, and those are your only cars.
Okay. I think it would be a short wheelbase. I'm probably biased, but I've kind of driven most things, and they kind of do everything. Yeah. They really do. I mean, they're very, very usable. The only time you probably wouldn't want to jump in if it's an ice cold morning with frost and maybe foggy or whatever. It's kind of that's difficult. But apart from that, you just drive it.
Fair play. Yeah. Well, sounds like a pretty great car to be driving most of the time.
Yeah.
What do you think what's an undervalued car at the moment? What do you think should be worth more or is particularly cheap?
Personally, I think an F40.
Fair.
You're going to like to hear me say that. I just think they're a fantastic car. In 20 years' time, everyone's going to, you look at, I know they're not the same, but you look at McLaren F1s and I know they're much lower volume and all those sort of things, but What else? I suppose I tend to think in the Ferrari market rather than the broad spectrum, so I'm probably thinking more about that. I think a GTC actually, 330 or 365 GTC.
Yeah.
I think they're undervalued. I think they're such a great car. You know, probably should have answered that earlier in the question, or earlier in the program. But if I wanted to go out for a day in a Ferrari with my girlfriend or wife or whatever, GTC is a perfect car. Really great car to drive.
Yeah.
It's a cruiser. It's not a sports car.
But then you get all the things that bring as well. Like,
Yeah.
You can take a passenger out and put some luggage in it.
It's got a proper boot and it's quiet and refined and, you know, for 1967 or whatever, my word, you know, look at all the other stuff that was on the market.
Yeah. No, pretty cool. Sweet. Right, final question. What's the most interesting car to you at the moment? What are you looking up, Googling, going, ooh, that's interesting.
New cars or old cars?
One or the other. Doesn't matter.
I think I'm very interested in what people are making today.
Yeah.
Because we like to make things. So when people come up with something, you go, I don't think it's a car I'd ever want to own, but I think the Gordon Murray car is very cool.
It's very cool.
And I'd love to have a really good look round one. I think we're going to take some cues from that for our new car.
Yeah.
But our car will be much more analog than that is. That's because that is, you know, quite digital.
Yeah, modern car.
But it's very exciting.
And of all the things that have come out in the last, I don't know, quite a long time, that to me, just the ethos of like, I want to make the best road driving experience.
And without it being a hypercar. You know, he's just stuck two fingers up at all that stuff and just gone, I'm going to make a proper car.
I'm just going to make, what do I need? 3 pedals, a V12.
Yeah,
it needs to be lightweight. And that's about it, really. Like, for me, if I could have one, I would totally, if I had the money, I'd totally have one.
Yeah, it's you know, he's a very clever guy and he's obviously made some amazing things and you can't help admire him. I just hope that people will use them. That's the thing that I feel sad about is, you know, I feel you may get a bunch of, you know, look at Rowan Atkinson, you know, he drove an F1 McLaren, you know, smashed it a couple of times, used it, did loads of miles in it. You think that's how it should be. Yeah. These trailer queens or whatever you want to call them, it's just the wrong way to go.
I think there'll definitely be people that will use them.
Good.
Funnily enough, I know the guy that bought that Rowan Atkinson car afterwards, and he uses it, and he uses all the cars, and I'm sure he will have one of these Gordon Murray things coming on, and he will use it, and you're like, yeah, this is what it's all about. Like,
it is. It really. I mean, you know, you admire the styling, you admire the design. You know, some of the stuff is ingenious, but you just go, but that should be applied. You know, you should be able to enjoy that, use it,
and that design specifically. The whole point of the car is it's designed to be used. Yeah. And it's got luggage and you can take some mates along. Whereas like, like a modern Ferrari that's just come out, the SF90. Yeah. It doesn't have any luggage space whatsoever. You're like, oh, it's like 1,000 horsepower. Like, you can't even put a bag in that car. Yeah. So where are you going to take it? Yeah. Like pub? That's about it.
You know, you should be going to Monaco in it.
Yeah.
You know,
you should be doing an Alps tour.
Yeah, just get in it. Take your partner, friend, girlfriend, whatever it is. Go have some fun.
Yeah. Put some, like, it does my head in that some cars don't have enough luggage space to use. And to me, it makes them unusable. Yeah. Like, oh, yeah, well, if you've got enough money to have that car, you've got enough money to have someone drive around behind you that's not fun. Nah. That's really rubbish.
That is awful.
Like,
it's just awful, yeah.
Or that thing you're going on a road trip with some mates and someone's like, oh, can I just put a bag in your car? No. My car's already got enough weight in it, thank you very much.
Yeah.
If I wanted more luggage, I would have packed it.
Yeah.
No, it's a cool thing. I think that Gordon Murray car sounds interesting.
No, it's gonna be exciting, yeah.
But no, well, thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Sam.
It was nice to meet you and see you around this site and drive the car. Phenomenal.
Good.
Phenomenal thing.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Cool.
Good.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.